Welcome to The Discriminating Gamer, the board game hobby's answer to Dallas the TV show. Here's a hint. Zach is JR. Say, do you like newspapers? Newspapers. The big papers, they got all the news on them. Before the internet. Right, now you remember. Well, anyway, today we're going to take a look at a board game that is all about putting out a newspaper. The name of this game, Extra Extra. Read all about it from Mayfair Games. In Extra Extra from Mayfair Games, 2 to 6 players are going to attempt to put out the best newspaper they can. Now this is a worker placement game, or as the Germans call it, a worker placement game. And essentially what you're going to do through the course of this game is put reporters on a board which represents the offices of the newspaper. Actually, there's 3 different boards representing kind of different places within the office that you put together, and you kind of have an arrow that goes through that shows which actions are resolved in what order. But first, what you're also going to do is you're each going to get your own kind of newspaper player board. It's got kind of a grid, and that's where you're going to put out your stories to try to fill up your newspaper. You're also going to start the game with 2 reporters. You're going to have a pool of 3 more that you can potentially recruit during the game, but you're only going to start with 2. And you place them kind of on these dollar bills that kind of remind you that you have to pay for these guys. Now, you're going to have different cards. A lot of them represent different stories from around the world, from different cities around the world. You're also going to have various tiles, kind of like these Tetris shapes that you're going to be putting on your player board. You're going to want to go ahead and separate those and prepare those for the game. Now, during the game, the very first thing you're going to do is shuffle various stories for the news desk. Now, these are, again, stories from around the world. You look at the cards, they tell you kind of where they go, you know, Berlin, Tokyo, New York, the different cities around the world. And so you can get multiple cards in some of those cities, and some of the cities may have no cards at all. You're also going to fill up tokens in the morgue, and that's going to be important to help kind of, you know, pay for some of the stories that you want later. You're also going to refresh the news wire, which are kind of some extra story cards that are going to be available at the top of the board later. Now, you're each going to collect $400. This is kind of your payment for each round, and the problem is you've got to pay out of that $400, $100 for each reporter you are employing. The reporters, of course, are the meeples. Now, you can also play stringer cards, and they can help you out in certain ways during the course of the game. Then you're going to actually place the reporters on the board. And you place them, of course, this is a worker placement game, so you can place them in the various actions. And there are a lot of different actions. Now, you can place them under the cities to try to get the cards from that city. You can do that either, you know, with a news wire or the news desk. But then you can also go ahead and you can place your reporters in various places. You can place them in the morgue to take those little kind of triangles of, you know, either stories or photos that you can use to help, again, pay for tiles later. In the editor's desk section of the board, that's where, of course, you can actually buy the stories you may want. And of course, they're in different shapes. You can buy headlines, which may be required for some of the scenarios you play, or you can buy columns, and you have to pay for these with those story cards. And a lot of the story cards have either, you know, photograph icons or story icons of typewriters, and it's going to tell you what that's going to require. And there may be some other conditions to gain certain stories. And again, you want to go after certain ones to help you fill up your player board. So when you need to pay for those stories, of course, you can use the cards, but you can also use some of those triangles from the morgue. If you can put them together, they can form one of those icons you may need to pick up a particular story. There's also the typesetting space, and the typesetting space can allow you to actually kind of rearrange stuff if you're not happy with the way it's set. You can play that. You can also go to the interview, which if you go to the interview, you can get an interview token, which will give you some bonus points for a particular story. There's also the classifieds, and that's things like cartoons or crossword puzzles. Those are just little kind of one square tokens that aren't really going to help you as far as points and stuff, but they're going to help take up space on your board and get it ready for publication. In the operations section of the board, there is advertisements. You can take an advertisement of a various shape and get money back for that, but it's going to take up space on your board that you're not going to score, but you got some cash in hand, which can be very helpful, particularly if you've got a lot of reporters out there. Speaking of which, you can recruit more reporters. You can place a meeple in a place to recruit more meeples, more reporters. That can help you out, give you more options in subsequent turns. You can also take out loans, and there's, of course, a space there for bonuses. Now, there are a lot more actions than the ones I've just describing. There are quite a few more, but those are some of the most basic and most important actions in the game. Now, there's a mechanic here, too, that if you just place one of your reporters in one of these spaces, anybody else can go ahead and take their meeple reporter and just knock you out and take over that space. So there's nothing keeping them from doing that if you just set your guy down there. But what you can do is actually put some of your cash beneath the reporter, say $200 beneath the reporter. So if anybody else wants to try to take that space, they're going to have to put in $300. And you kind of get these bidding wars going on for spaces, particularly some of those cities where you've got a lot of stories building up and you want all those cards. You may want to put down a lot of money to try to take that particular space. Then finally, you activate all of the various actions. And there's kind of an arrow that goes through the three boards that kind of shows in which order the various actions activate. Now, at the end of the round, you check whether or not the victory conditions have been met. Usually that, of course, entails filling up your space, filling up all the spaces on your board, and then announcing, you're going to press. And if you're satisfied, if you don't want to tinker with it anymore, effectively, as soon as one person does it, they can end the game. So once a player fills the pages they need completely, they can go ahead, go to press, say it's the end of the game, and everybody goes ahead and scores their various newspapers. Now, there are lots of different ways you score in this game. Different stories have different point values, circulation point values. You also are going to get bonus points for things like interviews. There's going to be other ways that give you bonus points. Different factors are going to come in there, and you score in all these various ways. Again, whoever has the most circulation points wins the game. Now, critically, too, the game also comes with various scenarios. I think there's about 9 scenarios. This is to kind of increase replay value. It also means that the size of the newspaper you're working with, the grid size, actually changes with the scenario. So you may just be filling up smaller grids for some scenarios and larger grids for others. This is also going to affect game length. Some of the smaller grids, this game will be over 45 minutes. The longer grids can take a couple hours. So extra, read all about it from Mayfair Games. It's a worker placement game. And I got to tell you, it's one of those worker placement games where you pick up the rule book and you start reading it, and it's just like, okay. There's a lot in the rule book. There's a lot of little kind of minutia, and you're kind of wondering, okay, is this a game where when I sit down and I play it and everything starts to come together, it's going to be really easy? And the answer is yes. This is not. It looks like an overly complicated game. It's not a complicated game because there's no one mechanic that's really, really hard in that sense. It's not a complicated game. It is a busy game. It is a busy game. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of mechanics. Like I say, I just scratched the surface about some of the places you can go to with your reporters and the things you can do and some of the bonus things and scoring and victory conditions. I just scratched the surface of it because there is so many different things going on here. And it's a little overwhelming and it's a little exhausting. So my friends and I, we played this game. We started with one of the introductory scenarios. And there are the different scenarios here, as I say. And we started with one of the introductory scenarios. We started playing through it, and, we got through it, and we finished it, and we kind of thought, well, what do you think? What do you think? And everybody's saying, well, it wasn't really that thrilling. There wasn't that much to it. There's a lot of things going on, but, it kind of didn't really capture our imaginations. And so we said, well, that was just the introductory scenario. Let's play one of the other scenarios. Let's play one of the more advanced scenarios. So we played some of the more advanced scenarios, and we found that it really didn't capture our imagination. Extra has a fun theme, and it seems like one of those games that if it was a bit more streamlined, if it wasn't quite so busy, it might be a really good game. As it is, it just feels, meh. It's just not that exciting. It's not that fun. And to compound my unhappiness with this game, a few months ago, we played and reviewed Penny Press from Asmati Games, a game with a very similar theme. Had player boards where you're making the Tetris shapes with the newspaper stories and playing the cards from the different kinds of stories and what have you. And I really liked that. We all got a really big kick out of Penny Press. We thought that was a very fun newspaper-themed game. Extra Extra just doesn't quite do it for us. I was very disappointed, and I got to tell you, I love Mayfair Games. I think they're a great company, and they put out some really, really fun games. But this isn't one of them. I was just not a fan of Extra Extra. So it is with some sadness, some reluctance, that the discriminating gamer cannot recommend Extra Extra. Fun theme, good ideas, too busy. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We ask you to please like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube. We are The Discriminating Gamer. And you know, with the decline of the newspaper industry as we see the rise of the internet, maybe we should stop calling them newspapers and start calling them olds papers.
Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
I hope so. I hope so.